All right, so lately the story has been revolving around Sukuna. And one of the big questions is like, what's his origin? Where does he come from? Why does he look the way that he does? I've been talking about this for like, I guess years now. I guess most of us in the community have. So, brought together some other Jujutsu Kaisen creators to help talk about this. We've got Mir, No Operator, and the Fake Weeb. What's up, guys?
Hello, hello.
Yo, glad to be here.
Hey, how are you doing, everybody? Thanks for having me.
So, we were talking a little bit about this before the recording started, but the idea, I guess you could say, for Sukuna, at least where Gege got it from, was actually like this creepypasta from 2chan, interestingly enough, where, like, long story short, these students, maybe kids or something, they find this, like, ancient mummified corpse of this individual who's apparently Sukuna, and they have to get it to a certain temple, and he becomes like the cursed Buddha, essentially. I know that doesn't sound that interesting, but I think this story is also like really old or something. It comes from the Nihon Shoki, which is like one of the oldest pieces of literature or something. Don't quote me on that, but that's basically the long and the short of it. Another super interesting thing that I really didn't pick up on until I saw this recently was that on like the cover of chapter 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen, in the background here, you see like that mummy with the Kenjaku looking clothes on. This, it's not confirmed that it's Sukuna, but I think this is like supposed to represent the original folklore around Sukuna. Because like, what is this thing? You never see it, right? We never see this in the series, as far as I know.
I mean, if
Yeah.
it's for all I know, like it is something that Gege could be foreshadowing to, or just planning to reference later whenever we do get that Heian era flashback that we're definitely we have to get, right? Because if you look at it, one of the other foreshadowings in this picture is one of Megami's little Gamma Shikigami has Sukuna's markings. So it also wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if he's going to foreshadow something like that 213 chapters or 212 chapters before it happens, that something like the mummified Sukuna in the background could mean something 300 to 400 chapters later.
Wow. Yeah, you're blowing my mind. I just realized that now. The frog does have the markings. That's wild. And also you were saying like him planning it out since the first chapter. Weeb, this is something we talked about like last year, about how Gege talked about he had Megumi's like story already planned out ahead of time. And we were wondering like, what does that mean? Does it mean like Megumi's gonna die or something? But it's like, do you think he had this like Sukuna taking him over planned this whole time?
Sukuna taking over Megami's body, I don't think so, because I do remember like when he first met Megami, he wasn't really interested in him until he opened his 10 Shadows technique. So it's very weird how like all this planning and like everything came together, because now, okay, he got the 10 Shadows technique and it's almost as if he planned it from the start, but from what we know, it wasn't planned. So it's very interesting how I guess like Kenjaku and Sukuna planned everything to come together.
Yeah, I will say this. I definitely think it was planned from the beginning. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there is a theory, it's on Reddit as well, where in Japanese tradition, there's this 10 steps to a reincarnation. I forgot what the exact name is. I think it's like a Buddha 10 steps to reincarnation or something like that. And it is basically going about the same way that the 10 shadows technique is. And the way that the thing works in Japanese tradition is once the final step, like the 10th step, is attained, you get a full reincarnation. And the final and 10th step, if you guys remember, is going to be Maharaga. He is, and it seems like he's going to do that in the recent chapter. Like he's summoning Maharaga to tame it, and then we might see like a reincarnation if it follows with the Japanese tradition.
Oh. Wow.
Oh,
I never heard of that.
Yeah, I have a friend that has like everything on it.
Wow.
probably in my DMs.
So like,
Yeah, I can get that.
He would like absorb, or I don't know, or this would be like Maharaga's secret ability or something.
No. It's like once you fulfill all the 10 steps, you gain a reincarnation, like in the lore of like this. I don't know what the exact name of it is. I can get the exact name. But once you complete the 10th step, which is Maharagi, all the other ones are like the other 10 shadows, which are, I want to say like weak in comparison, but Maharaga is like the final like grand step. And once that one has been tamed, then it's over. Because if you notice, Sukuna's already tamed the other ones, like Divine Dog. You saw he summoned it in the recent chapter. But the only one that he hasn't tamed that's left is Maharaga. So once he tames Maharaga, if it lines up with this thing that's in Japanese lore, then he would gain a full reincarnation.
Oh, okay. So it kind of just happens. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we actually talked about this in our last collabs. Sukuna summoning Maharaga, and now it's happening. It's wild. So before I go into like what seems to be like the popular theory, I guess, or the lately the most popular theory around like what Sukuna's origin is, I'm just curious, like, what do you guys think currently of like what his origin is? Because I'll say, like, when I'm talking about Sukuna and what's going on with him in my reviews, before I found out about this brother and twin stuff or whatever that we're going to be talking about, I assumed that, I don't know, he was like altering his soul or something, like Mahito possibly, because the soul stuff's coming up more and more, or he's figured out something that like Tengen has, because he's kind of similar to Tengen but yet not the same. So I'm just curious, like, operator, what do you think about Sukuna, like why he is the way that he is?
So as far as Sukuna goes, being born in the Heian era, I was kind of talking about this a little bit earlier on my own kind of stuff. But so basically, in the Heian era, in order to be a sorcerer in an era where sorcery was at its peak, thriving, in order to survive and just be able to live in that sort of environment, you yourself had to be, as far as what Sukuna says to Jogo during the Shibuya incident, willing to burn everything to the ground in order to get strength, in order to get stronger. And it's kind of what Oro also says to Yuta when she says that Yuta's reached his peak because he doesn't have that selfish nature to break off and become a calamity. He has still that connection to the world around him. He's not willing to make that last severance in order to gain that extra strength and ascend to that level that we see Sukuna at. I mean, as far as what Sukuna's is and what he's been doing, it seems like, and something that I've always thought, especially since we saw him switch into Megami's body, is that Sukuna's just been body hopping, and it's for a while now. This clearly isn't the first time that he's done this, and it also seems like it's pretty routine between him and Urame at this point, that they've done this before. I also feel like that's part of the reason why Gege has mentioned that even though Sukuna looks just like Yuji, he has no relationship to Yuji. He's not an ancestor. Yuji's not a descendant of Sukuna, nothing. It makes me think that possibly back in the day, this also may be why Itadori was a perfect cage for Sukuna, that Sukuna may have body hopped into one of Itadori's ancestors back in the day, or something along those lines. It makes me think that Sukuna has just been this whole 20 finger thing. He was sealed. That's what the story says. I don't believe that. I think that's kind of a bunch of BS, in my honest opinion. I feel like him getting split into 20 fingers was always a part of his plan, and there's just so much we don't know about Sukuna that it's impossible to even say at this point until Gege gives us more things to kind of decipher.
Yeah, I agree with that. In the beginning, I for sure thought that Sukuna was defeated, but then as the story goes on, it's like, who the hell defeated him? Like, he's so powerful. And now, in these last couple chapters, it definitely seems like this was premeditated. Like, they wanted this to happen. What do you think about that, Weeb?
So actually, to kind of go back to what you're saying, how maybe Sukuna sort of like altered his soul or something, it reminded me that Sukuna definitely does have some unknown dominion over souls, because he's the only character in the series who can straight up reject Mahito's idol transfiguration. We know like idol transfiguration can change the shape of the soul, but when Mahito tried to transfigure Sukuna in the Junpei arc, it's almost like Sukuna's soul just refused the transfiguration. Even like the second time when Yuji just broke into Mahito's domain, it like automatically made Sukuna to overwhelm the transfiguration, because obviously his domain's guaranteed hit is idol transfiguration, so it like forced Sukuna to defend his own soul, and this time attack Mahito's, like he brought him into his innate domain. So I think that's really interesting how Sukuna has that dominance, and it probably correlates to how he, became the King of Curses, how he's evolved from every other curse. I mean, we know Gojo said that he was once a human before, so on top of the fact that the body and the soul has played a recurring theme, like you said, then yeah, I think having some sort of dominance of his own soul is definitely a key factor to his full form, or to maybe understanding what true Jujutsu sorcery is.
What do you think about that, Mir?
Sort of like what Weeb said, that this has been planned the entire time. I entirely believe that this has been planned the entire time. If you remember what Kenjaku's goal was with Choso and the others in the beginning, the goal with Choso was to see, and the rest of the brothers, was to see how strong can he make somebody if they're a mix between human and cursed spirit. And so we know that once Kenjaku did, the weird stuff with Yuji's mom and Yuji came out, it was sort of like always planned that Yuji would be the vessel for Sukuna, because he wanted to basically replicate something like what happened to Choso. He wanted to create a strong vessel for Sukuna. And we know that Kenjaku has basically been having these plans for over 1,000 years. And sort of like you said, who in the world could have defeated Sukuna? We know that there's also like a volume extra that says that Sukuna literally has the power to destroy the world. And then I don't know if you guys know about them. There's a translation after Sukuna cuts Mahito, where it actually calls Sukuna the honored one throughout heaven and earth. So it's also like sort of like what Zhoniin was saying. There's basically nobody back then who could have defeated Sukuna. Like he was basically this peak. Yeah, he was basically this peak. And then also with the fact that Kenjaku has been having these plans over the past 1,000 years. And then, the whole thing, like I said, with Yuji being this strong vessel, it seems that Kenjaku probably had something to do with Sukuna being split into 20 fingers. He probably wasn't defeated. It was always like Sukuna's plan to come back like in a strong vessel and then, do what needed to be done.
Yeah, I think it was actually, to kind of add on to that, it may have been confirmed, or at least heavily implied, like before our crew entered the Culling Games. Obviously, Yuji, before he even stepped into a colony barrier, he was already considered a Culling Game player, and then they had like this realization, because it was Sukuna, that Kenjaku must have created a contract with Sukuna back in like the Heian era, or even before that. So I do think, no Jujutsu sorcerers ever defeated him back then. It was Kenjaku that made Sukuna be preserved into 20 grave wax fingers.
And it goes back to what Operator was saying about that Heian era flashback. I'm not even 100% sure if we're ever gonna fully get it at this point. I mean, I hope we do. We kind of have to. But to finish this off, we'll go into what the likely origin of Sukuna is. So in that urban legend that we were talking about with like the original Sukuna corpse thing, apparently he had like a twin with him, as Operator mentioned in the beginning. So the whole thing about the twin is going to lead to why Sukuna has like his forearms and his four eyes, because it's very possible that the bath that we see in chapter 216, where Urarami has like this big wooden basket thing with all these bugs, and they're all draining through a special selection of cursed energy solution and venom and all that stuff. I think this is possibly giving us insight into like Sukuna's backstory, because he possibly did something like this himself, but it wasn't like bugs, it was like people. So there's like this process called Kodoku, where all of these bugs and whatever these venomous creatures get them into like a cage or whatever, have them all like battle royale, and then the winner would be like revered or whatever. So I don't know, at the end of the battle there'd be like one big like snake or like something like that left. But in this case with Sukuna, it was like people, and it was like his brother was with him, and he like literally ate people and his brother. And that's where we get like all of this cleave and dismantle and filleting and food stuff that's always like mentioned with Urarami and Sukuna. It's because like he's literally eating people. And I know we've been talking about that for like years. It's like, oh, Sukuna probably eats people, gets their curse technique. But it's like, I think it's because of his backstory. Like he was forced to like cannibalize other sorcerers and his brother, and that's why he has like the four eyes and the forearms and multiple curse techniques as well, because possibly like cleave and dismantle are like two sides of the same coin, and that also could parallel to the whole Maki and Mai thing that we just went through. Like I also thought that was not odd but interesting, why they have like such a specific like dynamic and backstory to them if it's not going to like purposely relate to something else, you know. Not that it necessarily has to, but I think the whole Maki and Mai thing about, you know, the one curse technique is tethered to both of them, and the, you know, both of them existing at once is inhibiting the full potential of another. I think it could be paralleling to Sukuna's backstory. But yeah, what are your what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm definitely on the minority of this, so me or Noop, you guys can like say what you, but because for me, I actually don't think or I don't believe in like the Sukuna twin theory, because if we kind of use Maki and Mai's heavenly restriction as an example, they were like restricting both their powers. Obviously within the latest chapter we see what Mai could have been, with like the potential of the construction technique, as we see with Yorozu. And then for Maki, obviously she didn't have her like curse energy fully depleted, so from like that heavenly restriction, they were kind of limiting their own powers. So if we kind of tie that to Sukuna, if he had a twin, then yeah, like he would have like the four arms and like the entire features he had. But I think the general consensus is that, okay, so with Mai and Maki, since like Mai died, Maki's now like, she has like her fully awakened heavenly restriction. So if Sukuna ate his twin, then to me it would be weird how instead of getting like more powerful, he degraded from getting four arms and now he only has two arms. He looks, I guess, less demonic. So that's kind of like a I guess a contradiction to that theory. But I don't know, I guess personally to me, I don't know how I'd feel if Sukuna had like a twin back in the day. I'm definitely on the minority of this. So I don't know what you, Noop and Mir, think.
Okay, well, I actually sort of like the theory that he had a twin, and it would sort of actually make sense if he had a twin and killed him or ate him, because No Operator sort of said it a bit earlier. We were talking about the mindset that Sukuna has and what Sukuna did to disregard all others. Oh, the scan itself says, when Ryu is talking to Yuta after the fight, and Ryu tells Yuta, "I've seen what surpasses the horizon of sorcerers, cursed spirits, and strong fighters. It's overwhelming aggression that disregards all else like a calamity." And it shows that picture of like back in the day, prime Sukuna. And it's like sort of what Sukuna was telling the Jogo, that you have to disregard all others and basically say screw everybody else. So say if he did have a twin and ate him, it would be like the epitome of disregarding everybody else. Disregarding somebody who's supposed to be close to you would be like the highest form of disregarding everyone else, because it goes to show that no matter how close of a bond you have with somebody, twins literally being the closest bond, that person is a mirror of yourself. After eating them or killing them, you have fully like realized yourself in that mindset of being a calamity. So I think it would like fit Sukuna perfectly.
Wait, sorry, Noah. This actually just kind of brought up to my mind. I think if you said earlier that like Sukuna didn't have any relatives, or I probably just misheard that. But I swear I saw that like in a fan book or something.
Well, I don't know so much about relatives. I know in the data book it says he didn't have any descendants. Like he didn't like.
Oh, okay.
And basically he was saying that like Yuji and Sukuna looking alike has nothing to do with Yuji being like his great 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 grandson or anything like that. Like Sukuna didn't have any lovers. He didn't father any children or anything like that.
Okay, so yeah, never mind. The twin theory is still viable.
What do you think of it overall, operator?
I think it's completely possible because while I was kind of looking into the twin theory, just as everyone was kind of talking, I did see that Ryomen actually does mean two-faced. And also in the one panel that Mir put down, it says for the double-faced specter, he doesn't care. In that one translation, when he's summoning his domain and using it against Mahito to save Nanami and Yuji. It definitely seems like the whole two-face thing is something that pertains to Sukuna in some way, shape, or form. Be that because he has a twin, or be that because he's got someone grafted onto him. I feel like it's something very similar to the whole star plasma vessel Tengen kind of thing. Because even Kenjaku, after he survives the black hole, he kind of looks at Tengen, sees what he looks like now, and goes, oh, wow, you kind of look like Sukuna a little bit. So I feel like that is relevant in some way, shape, or form. I feel like both of their forms have something to do with each other. It has something to do with an ascended form that we just don't really know much about yet. Again, we need more information to kind of figure that out. But I feel like that was really interesting. And the fact that Ryomen means two-faced, it's a specific point for Gege to name him that. The double-faced specter, the fact that he literally has the two faces in a lot of the work he has. And as Mir mentioned, that is definitely a key point to his character, the whole two-face thing. Whether that means he has a twin or it means something else, the forearms, everything, it definitely means a lot. One thing that I thought is really interesting is that both Sukuna Megami and Yorozu Sumiki are both choosing to stay in their regular sorcerer forms because they claim it's easier to fight sorcerers this way. I don't know what any of you guys think. I think it's also a way so Gege can be lazy and not have to draw Sukuna in his four-armed monstrous form. But that's just me.
Yeah, that is, I questioned that myself in the review. I thought that meant he knows that he's going to fight Kenjaku's big ultimate thing, the humanity or Japan merged with Tengen.
Yeah, I found it kind of odd, like when Sukuna said, oh, this form is easier to fight sorcerers with, because I would assume, okay, if you have your full form with the forearms and everything, like, wouldn't that be like more powerful? So it definitely confused me for a bit, and I'm interested to see why it's easier to stay in, I guess, his current form.
But yeah, that's it for this one. This was a good conversation. It could have been better on my part. I could have had more material presented, but I appreciate you guys coming, dropping your thoughts on this. Everybody watching, please check out Mir's channel, No Operator, Fake Weeb, all making fantastic Jujutsu Kaisen content and other series as well. But that's pretty much it, guys. Like the video if you liked it. Have a great one. I'll see you in the next.